We appreciate you coming up, and I understand Howard said earlier you're going to be at the Civil Air Patrol Lone Eagle Squadron.
Yes.
That's great. We've got to keep our kids, young people motivated. That squadron, I know at least one young lady that graduated, went through that squadron, went to the Air Force Academy, and flies gunships. I don't know if she's still flying gunships, but so it's important for the young people. So we appreciate you doing that too. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you.
How many people live in Warthog? Just one?
Just one. It's a one-seat aircraft. He was asking me earlier, I was asking me earlier about the A-10, what the first flight was like. And it's just you. There's only one seat. They made two-seat variants of the A-10 Warthog. And apparently one of them's in the boneyard, the other one's on a stick somewhere out in front of a gate at a base, I think I'm not really sure where, I want to say it's at in Ohio somewhere. But you go through 3 simulator rides, doing all the emergencies. You sit in a cockpit mock-up, which is basically a little bit smaller than a table. They blindfold you. Where's this switch? Where's that switch? Where's the ram dump in case you get smoke and you can't see anything? And about a half hour later, if they're happy, they say, how you feel? Pretty good? Okay, see you tomorrow. Taxi out, put the gear up, and then no one's landing up to you. So plane flies, it's like a big Cessna. It's got a big Hershey bar wing. It's a beautiful plane to fly. And you know, training is top notch, so everybody feels pretty good. You're nervous but excited, so taking off in a plane when you have no help, that's a good feeling. Again, interject anytime you want, ask any questions you want. Yeah.
On the A-10, it was going to be retired, and then people said no, and where are we now?
My understanding, when I left the A-10 back in 2010, summer of 2010, I had spoken to a couple other squadrons around the country who I was considering to move. Fortunately, in the Guard, you have the option to say I do or I do not want to move. And almost all of them to a T said, don't waste your time coming here, we're not going to have the plane much longer anyways. And Senator McCain did a heck of a job fighting for it, among a couple other people whom I don't know. But the grunts on the ground basically said, we want it, and fortunately the Air Force listened, and they're keeping it. It's going to be around for quite a while now. The F-35 was supposed to replace it, and without getting into too much information, you can't beat a 30mm round. You just can't. It's, and the number of rounds carries about 1,150 rounds. No aircraft carries that many except for the AC-130, which is a gunship. So it's just a flying gun, point and shoot. We used old pippers. You call it a iron gun sight. It wasn't literally iron, but the plane was made to fly with everything broken, and the gun still works. And we would train shooting the gun with no computerized help, which may be nothing to those of you that have been flying a long time ago. Look, thank you. Thanks. No computerized help, but it was really a dream to fly. So, real quick background. My great-grandfather was in World War I. These were all interview questions for the Guard. My grandfather was in World War I on both sides of the war, I should say. I had all kinds of relatives over in Germany. My grandfather came from Germany. I found out that a distant family relative, man, he was, I think in 7th grade at the time, towards the end of World War II. He manned anti-aircraft guns. I said, well, what'd you do? He goes, well, we shot at the B-17s. I said, did you shoot any down? He goes, oh, heck no, we didn't even try to. But we had kids manning those at the end of the war. My father was in the Marines prior to Vietnam. My brother was in the Army, served a tour in Iraq. He was a tanker in the M1A1. And again, I started late in life. I tried to get in later in my 20s, and I was too old, so I tried for the Guard. Flew the A-10 Warthog for about 3 years total, and transferred over to KC-10. This was one of my more pleasurable experiences. We did an air show in Abbotsford, British Columbia, which is near Vancouver, and I found this online, and I'm actually doing this landing here, but it's a fun plane to fly. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got in. Some of these acronyms, AMS, OCS, that's just Officer Candidate School. UPT is Undergraduate Pilot Training. IFF, since I flew fighters, I had to go through
Why don't
it.
you go through UPT?
Columbus Air Force Base. You?
Williams.
Williams? Apparently that was the best one.
It was a good,
But they shut
good
it.
weather.
IFF is Intro to Fighter Fundamentals, which is a pre-fighter pilot trainee course, which is, well, we'll just call it intense. KC-10 Flying Training Unit, and then back to the 76 for Air Refueling Squadron here at McGuire. So, briefly, again, I started late. I got my private pilot's license up here in Morristown. Worked and flew with the Civil Air Patrol for a time being. Anything I could do to fly, I was happy to do. I applied just after September 11, 2001, so since I was too old to go active duty, all of the reserve and guard squadrons in the United States were plussing up on their pilots because everybody got furloughed from the airlines. I managed to get a few interviews, but it really took me about 5 years to get in, and I was 29 when I got hired. And yeah, I get to talk more for younger kids, but you want to do something, you want to do it. You don't take no for an answer. And I just kept pushing. I applied to every single fighter squadron in the United States that had anything that I would even consider flying. AMS, that was the Air National Guard's version of Officer Candidate School, but it's the same thing. It was in Knoxville, Tennessee instead of Maxwell Air Force Base down in Arizona. Just like anybody else, teamwork, integrity, dependability, being a thinker. I was one of the few people there that came in with zero experience. Most guys had experience in the there were maintenance chiefs and things like that. So everyone had experience but me. So they like to put me in charge. See how I tell somebody what to do, and I didn't know what I was doing. You learn quickly. All right, undergraduate pilot training. Phase 1 is. The course itself is just about a year, just over a year long. So the first third is academics, and you come in your service dress, your tie, and everything appropriately put on your uniform. And they have this thing called boldface, which is one sheet of emergency procedures for the aircraft, where you the procedures that you wouldn't have time to look up: fires on takeoff, engine failures, ejection. Just unpleasant situations. And everyone in the class, the first day of class, the first few minutes of class, writes down the emergency procedures from memory. If your capital I is written as a small I, if you forget a dash and you put a dot, if you put 3 dots instead of 1, that's a failure. And you wear your uniform, which nobody wanted to wear, we all wanted to wear flight suits. You wear your uniform until everyone in class gets it right 3 times in a row. And if anybody makes it, once everybody gets it right, you now take it, instead of every day, you take it once a week. And if one person messes it up, and they always tell you who did it, well, group accountability works. They always say who did it, then everyone goes back to their uniform, the service dress for the next week. So you didn't mess it up. And there was a reason for it, because it's the kind of things that'll get you killed if you don't know it. So simulators, I flew the T-37 Tweet, which was one of the last classes to fly that, the Tweety Bird. And it's with all the highly advanced simulators now, which have full motion and screens and TVs that'll show you very, very realistic sights. This was an old Zenith TV with blue as the sky and green as the ground. Make it work. So big thing here is everybody worked together. I was very fortunate to be in a class of students that like to work together. Even though you're competing against one another for the best planes, which we thought, you're still working together as a team. And the one thing that the instructors always put out on us was you might not have the hands of a golden pilot, but if you work hard and you have the right attitude, you'll be fine.
They used to tell us if you had to give them enough bananas, then they could make us learn to fly.
Yeah, they had a few monkey quotes that I can't say here that, yeah, intimidation and harassment was plentiful. And it's always interesting because after you go fly for the day, you'd sit at the table with the instructor and then be rating you and telling you, you know, geez, how'd you even get here? You can't even tell up from down. And insult you in front of the rest of your classmates. What they really wanted them to do was come over and listen to your debrief to learn from your mistakes. And the classes that did that did much, much better as a whole. Phase 2, we actually got in the aircraft. First day, taxi out. He's like, all right, take off. I'm like, huh? Wait a minute. He goes, what do you think you're here to do? So taking off on my first day, that was quite a magical experience, taking off in a jet plane. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had this thing called stand-up, which they say you're at 3,000 feet and you see a light in the cockpit. What are you going to do? They're like, Lieutenant, you have the aircraft and you stand up in front of the class. All you have is your checklist. And you got to start asking questions. Okay, I look over to my right side. What do I see? You see a red light. Is a red light on the engine stack? Should it be on the engine stack? What engine's it on? It's on the oil pressure. Well, what's the oil pressure limit where the light should come on? You know, is it a faulty light or is it actually high oil pressure? And they go through this process, and if you screw anything up, sit down, you're not flying for the day. And then they call somebody else up, and then you just go from there. And you got to decide whether or not the person in front of you made a mistake, where they made a mistake, and correct the mistake. After that, we had shotgun questions where they would just start asking questions around the room. And you usually have a decent idea of what they were going to ask, and everybody kind of prepares for where they think they are in line with the questioning. And if you give them any reason to believe that you might be weak or not have studied that hard, they just keep digging and digging until you don't know something and insult you that way. Side-by-side instruction, that really just means you're in the left seat, the instructor's in the right seat, and they had a good ability of just being able to tell what you were looking at by the way your head looked. So you have a helmet on, you got a visor so they can't see your eyes, but if your head just went a little bit to the right, you're like, what are you looking at that for? You should be looking at this. So they could see everything you were doing. First solo, so you get the keys to the jet, take off all by yourself, go out to a piece of airspace in western Mississippi and practice your maneuvers.
After how many flights? When you solo?
6, 7 maybe? Not a lot, not a lot. So they made sure that you wouldn't pass out from a poor G strain, pulling too many G's in the tweet. Tweet had the highest G rate onset of any aircraft in the Air Force, which means the F-16, it's about 9.2 G max, I think, for the pilots. I don't know what the onset was for the F-16, but this was 11 Gs per second if you pull hard enough. The plane will just turn. Wow. But it's a fun plane to fly, and you can G-lock yourself and cause yourself to pass out quite simply. And well, I didn't do that. But you go out and play in the area, and since you don't have your safety net, your instructor there, you might have a good time doing your loops and your barrel rolls and your clover leaves, but you might not get a little bit too risky because just in case something happens. So again, teamwork's a real big thing. We had a couple of pilots that had some real difficulty, and one guy washed out, and the first thing the instructors did, which impressed me, was they sat the entire class down and they said, all right, he's no longer here. What did you do to help him? Because if you didn't do anything, it's just as much your fault as his fault. So they really, really wanted us to work together. Track select is at the end of phase 2, based on your scores on the tests and your flying grades. You would either get selected for the fighter bomber track or the cargo refueling track. Or some people wanted to fly helicopters, a few people flew helicopters, or the C-130. Again, attitude's a huge, huge part of this training. A lot of stress, one of the best times of my life, at the same time, one of the worst times. So phase 3, yeah.
How long does this training take?
It was 54 weeks total, so just over a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just over a year.
That's a year to take your wings?
Yep, year to get wings.
All right,
Phase,
so why is your call sign Benwell? Let's ask him.
so When I was trying to get into the Willow Grove A-10 Squadron, I didn't have any connections. My father wasn't a general, didn't know anyone, and the gentleman who actually was a pilot in Vietnam, who was a retired one-star brigadier general, said, "I'm not putting my rank on my letter." He goes, "You should get in because you deserve to be there, not because of my name." And I agree with him. And I went in for the first interview, did well, and they had to hire someone else because they were told to. Brought a case of beer in for their drill weekends for the next year until they told me not to. So they got to know me, and one of my summer jobs when I was in college was lifeguarding down in Cape May on the Jersey Shore. So they said if I could bring in Pamela Anderson, I was hired. Well, I couldn't get in touch with her. So they called me Baywatch because of that. There were other things they could call me, but can't say those here either. But yeah, that's why they call me Baywatch, because I was a lifeguard on the beach. And phase 3, I qualified for the fighter track. We flew the T-38 Talon, which we're trying to replace now. Call it the old White Rocket. Really everything was the same. Expectations, stand-up shotgun questions. The only thing that changed was when we flew the T-37, the fleet, we'd say, "Sir, is there smoke in the cockpit?" "Yes, there's smoke in the cockpit." And I remember my first day, one of my buddies got stood up. "Sir, is there smoke in the cockpit?" "I don't know. Is there? Do you think there's any blanket snow in the cockpit? Smoke in the cockpit? Do I need to tell you, or can you see it on your own? What do you think? Do you think it's supposed to be?" And it was just this immense barrage of insulting statements to this kid. We learned, well, don't ask anymore. Just tell them there is or there isn't. So they really wanted you to do things on your own. Shotgun questions, same concept as before, with asking intense questions, but this time there was a little bit more heat because, well, literally you're flying faster, you got more going on, and when you push buttons on these aircraft, when you get into the actual Air Force to fly the bombers and the fighters, when you push a button, you can't unpush it. So there was dead seriousness with a lot of things they did. Debriefs were very, very long. Our typical flight was about 1 to 1.2, just over an hour. And the debriefs would be 2 or 3 or 4 times that, depending on how well you did or didn't do. And they would go through the footage, they record it, and say, "What are you thinking here?" Geez, I don't even know I did that. Check rides. We'd have a check ride to learn, like, it's contact, which is taking off, landing, and just flying the plane. And also the aerobatic procedures where you're doing barrel rolls, clover leafs, loops, all the fun things. Teamwork, same thing. I was very fortunate to be in a class where everyone worked really hard together. After class, we get together, have a couple beverages, and just study together in different people's homes or apartments. Whoops, I just turned it. There we go. Check rides, I'll talk about one of my check rides. It was my instrument check ride, formation check ride, sorry. So myself and this other gentleman were the student pilots. 2 T-38s taken off, and I was given this check airman, the instructor pilot who was my examiner. He was notorious for failing people, hooking them, we call it. Hook means you failed your check ride. And it was a bad day to fly, it was bad weather, lots of clouds, lots of rain. They had a required land with fuel, so the joke is if it's your check ride, the abnormal will always happen. So here we are sitting at the end of the runway, waiting to take off. There's a T-1, which is the trainer for the cargo refueler track. It's a Beechcraft, it's a beach jet, it's a little business jet. He's on 7 mile final, so he's a good 3-4 minutes away, and he's going to be slowing down. And we have 2 supersonic jets on the ramp that want to take off. We're like, nope, you're waiting for him. So in this next 5 minutes, myself and my wingman, because I was leading out, were reanalyzing everything that we could or couldn't do. Anyways, long story short, we take off, we get into our airspace, and we did our maneuvers, came back, landed in the weather, doing procedures we had never actually done in real life yet. We knew how to do them, but we didn't do them yet. literally flying in close formation yeah, it looks great in air shows, but the reason is when you got someone who's got problems with their instruments, you can help them land. You fly through the weather, you are their instruments, they fly off of you. So everything they do is based on what you do. So we descended through the weather like that and split off and landed on different runways, which was an abnormal procedure for us. And I got a 27U for that check ride, 27 unsat. So he found all kinds of things I did wrong, but I felt pretty damn good that I worked through a lot of different issues on that flight. But teamwork was really big also with this assignment night. So that's the night after all your training, you find out are you going to get what you want. It's always based on the needs of the Air Force. So at this point in time, the UAVs, the Reapers and such, were a joke, meaning they would assign one to one of the pilots and they get really upset. No, just kidding, you got an F-16 at Luke Air Force Base. And they'd be very excited. That's what they wanted to fly their whole lives. So this is the night that everybody finds out what they're finally getting. I got the A-10 Warthog, went to graduation. It's a great moment. And I got an attitude throughout the whole program. The instructors are looking to see that you work together. Everybody has trouble, everybody had difficulties, but are you helping your buddies and sisters out with the whole process? After that, we went to IFF, Intro to Fighter Fundamentals, and I'm sorry if you can't read all this, but I just like the picture. It's the official, unofficial washout program. So what this is you graduated from pilot training, you got your wings, and they let you know that you don't know anything. It's a small program. And these instructors' job is to ensure that, really big picture, you don't kill yourself, you don't kill anybody that you don't want to kill. And the joke is, the only thing a wingman should say is toot, meaning I acknowledge what one just said, lead just said, bingo, which means, hey, I'm running out of gas, I gotta go home, and lead, you're on fire. They teach you all about the fighter pilot brotherhood, expectations, extraordinary attention to detail. It was very, very eye-opening, and we all learned an immense amount in a 6-week program. Briefs and debriefs. The briefs lasted about 2 to 3 hours, talking about everything you're going to do for that flight. Debriefs lasted, well, by the fire alarm for the building, little fire handle, it says, save a bro, save a buddy from Crusher. Crusher was a call sign of one of the instructor pilots, appropriate name. Save a buddy from Crusher's debriefs, pull the fire alarm. He was very, very intense, and one of the best instructors I ever had. I learned a lot from him. So you learn more from your mistakes than you do from other things. But these were the guys that would click second by second through your tapes and say, hey, in this maneuver, you're supposed to hold 5.5 Gs all through the maneuver. You let up and allowed 5.4 Gs at this point. Why'd you do that? And sir, I'm sorry, there's no reason, there's no excuse. But I thought I didn't even know that I did that. I was looking out the window, I thought I was the same, and I just didn't know. But this intense attention to detail is really what they wanted for all the guys and girls leaving this program. Because again, when you push that button in combat or wherever you are, you can't undo it. So we learned old fighter songs, so World War I, World War II songs, some newer ones, different games that we played. They teach you everything about the squadron so that when you get there, you'll be a good wingman, you can learn how to fit in. So again, precision, attention to detail were really all it was about, and attitude. I had trouble in the beginning, I had a lot of trouble, and I just kept pushing through, and that's what they want to see. They want to see you working hard, accept your failures, learn from them, and then move forward. Don't think about it too much. So that's what you're here for, yeah.
Okay, so now that's when you're in training on the A-10 here?
Okay, so this brief does not talk about the A-10 at all, but ask questions about it.
Well, quickly though, I'd
Yeah.
like to know how much actual combat simulation training did you have in the A-10, where you actually dove on a target tank and shot the gun at and blew it all up and everything?
Every single flight we flew in the A-10 involved shooting off live rounds and dropping BDU-33s, which are little dummy bombs, are about this big. And so every single flight we did, we had targets. Matter of fact, something you guys maybe want to do, Warren Grove Range, which is in central Jersey, they have viewing stands, just bleachers out there, and if you find out when the 177th F-16 Squadron out of Atlantic City, or there's Washington D.C. F-16s, there's A-10s down in, and those are the more fun to watch, I think. A-10s over out of Baltimore, Maryland. You can watch them do their training. It's a lot of fun. So every single
armament on the A-10?
30 millimeter rounds. Yeah, they have training rounds, HEI, high explosive incendiary, and then the armor piercing depleted uranium, which don't really need them anymore. Russians have them. Well, they weren't a problem for a while, but those are the primary. The training rounds have armor piercing capability also.
Just another quick question.
Yeah.
Do you have any downtime with all this training? In other words, did you get weekends off? Did you
Yes.
get a vacation for a week or something like that?
No vacation.
54 weeks of Monday
Yeah,
through Friday?
54 weeks. You'd have off July 4th. You'd have off Memorial Day, but yeah, there was no vacation. Weekends typically Friday night and Saturday were your down days where you do nothing, hang out with your friends, and Sundays back to the books.
Okay.
So
What
it
was the failure rate?
really dependent on the class, and things have changed recently from what I've heard, and I'm not going to talk about this on tape, but it wasn't that high. We had 2 people wash out of our class, and we had all heard there are other people washed out, but the failure rates have gone down. But I've spoken to a lot of different instructors in these programs, and they assure me that the attention to detail and precision necessary to fly fighters and bombers is still there. So it's...
In my class, 20 students, 11 got wings.
Wow. It wasn't that, it wasn't a 50% failure rate.
11 out of 20 got wings.
What about the gender split in your class?
We had one female, actually, in the T-37, we had one female instructor in my squadron and one girl. I had numerous female instructors when I got to the T-38 that flew F-16s. One of the best instructors I had in the A-10 was a female. Yeah, I don't have a reason for it. I think little boys look up at the sky and want to fly airplanes, and I just I'm not a girl, so I can't tell you what they dream about, but they're there now, and some of the best pilots in my squadron right now. We've got a lot of women flying, and I trust them with my life. They're very, very good pilots. So it just depends on where they are and what they want to fly.
When you wrapped up your UPT before you got your son, did you have a block of planes come down, or was it, we had a block of planes, you say there were 20, we had 20 planes come down, and then you were ranked top to bottom, but then you went and put what plane you wanted at the top of the list, and it worked your way
Yes.
down.
One of the fortunate things for me, if you're in the Guard or the Reserve, you have to qualify for the aircraft you're going to fly. You don't have to compete for it. Your competition for the A-10, my competition for the A-10 was getting into Willow Grove, the Reserve, the Guard Squadron up in Pennsylvania. So it took me 5 years to get in. So if you are in pilot training, the Air Force says, hey, we got out of all of our bases, we got 100 pilots graduating this quarter, this week, and we only need 2 F-16 pilots. We need 4 A-10 pilots, and the rest of them we need to go to the AWACS or a 135 or a KC-10 or a C-5 or whatever. So I know guys that went through fighter pilot training that aren't flying fighters because that's not what the Air Force needed. Actually, a lot of my instructors that are now retired in the KC-10, when they finished pilot training, I want to say it was the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, there was a point in time where you graduated pilot training, you got your wings, and if you were the best graduate, you got an airplane. The rest of them went and did other things. So they just weren't aircraft that were needed. So it really is dependent on what the Air Force needs at that time. Fortunately for my class, people got what they wanted. And those of us that were in the Guard they put us at the bottom of the pack to not affect the other guys in the class, so they can do what they wanted.
Well, you know, if I may, during
Yeah.
Vietnam, a lot of the guys in back, in that force, were qualified pilots.
Yeah.
There just wasn't enough need at the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the guy in back had his wings, he wasn't a pilot.
yeah.
Not, at least not in the Air Force.
It's all based on the needs. So, any other questions about the A-10? Ask away. I love talking about it. I do miss it. KC-10, we like to call it Big Sexy. These come things I'm going to talk about, some basics about the aircraft, training, and really what I'm going to go through today is just what a basic day is like, from mission planning, walking out, doing the walk around, doing briefings on the aircraft, and different missions that we perform. So, it might not be big enough, but the wingspan's just over 165 feet, about 182 feet long, about 59 feet high at the tail. Our max gross takeoff weight is 590,000 pounds. Max taxi weight is 593. We can carry about 345,000 pounds of fuel if we don't have any cargo. So about just over 56,000 gallons. Max cargo load is based on our zero fuel weight, but it's about 170,000 pounds. And unrefueled, we can fly 11,500 miles. And what that means is all the fuel that we carry to offload to other aircraft, we can use it also. We have a special tank that we use for the SR-71 with their specialized fuel, which they now outfitted for JP-8 that we use nowadays for us. So we can go a long ways. We got
Half around the world.
yeah, and I've told students this before. I'm a math teacher in high school right now. Well, wait a minute, you can't go all the way around the world. I'm like, you don't have to go all the way around the world. You only got to go halfway, because halfway gets you everywhere. And I had to explain the sphere.
If you have this plane fully loaded and you take off, let's say you have, I looked at that landing gear in the picture and I'm thinking, can you land it with a full load?
No, our max landing weight is 436,000 pounds, unless there's a better reason to get on the ground faster.
Okay, so you've got to fly it for some time.
You do.
Offload before you can set
Yeah.
it down.
One of the instructors I flew with when I first started flying this told me he took off max weight to go to Honolulu, to Hickam Air Force Base out of McGuire. He says, a beautiful night, moon's out, takes off, nice gradual bank, taking off. And he says he looks out and he sees this big bird flopping off in the distance. He's like, oh, geez. And the plane's so big, there's nothing you can do. You just keep flying and hope you don't hit it. He said he swore he saw that bird turn around, his eyes get about this big. A couple seconds later, he hears a flop. And then they had to go hold for 8 hours to burn the fuel off so they could land.
Oh, wow.
Do you ever dump it?
We can dump fuel, yeah. Usually it's based on how severe is the emergency. If they need the plane, like if the president's doing something, they need that plane, yeah, you're dumping fuel. If they don't, sorry, you have a long day flying in circles.
That 56,000 gallons, that's the deck tanks and wing tanks?
Yeah, we have wing tanks, and what the DC-10, the airliner, did, and for the cargo hold, we have fuel bladders in there.
Center wing.
Center wing and also nose, center, forward and aft tanks.
Can you dump everything to your receiver?
Well, not everything. Everything but what we need to land. But yes, we can give them gas from any tank.
Because on 97, we can dump everything, but there's one man I'll never, ever, ever forgive him. Staff Sergeant Baird. He said, we are not walking home.
Good
He said,
point.
I'll give them everything, but we're not going to walk home.
Well, that's the whole thing. There have been occurrences where guys were really, really trying to help out over Iraq and Syria, and the engineer said, hey, sir, we don't have enough gas to get back to wherever we're going. And you can reverse refuel through your own boom.
Really?
So it's very slow, but like you said, it's better than walking.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do all the planes that get refueled use the same fuel other than the SR-71?
Yeah, everything right now uses the basic JP8 fuel, so we don't carry any fuel. Like, I've never heard of the SR-71 flying for a while. Too bad it doesn't. But yeah, we all use the same fuel. Navy, Air Force, we refuel all different NATO aircraft, Germans, French, Belgians, Brits, some Spaniards over the desert. So they all get the same gas. It's just, do they get the boom or they get the drogue? You know, I'll show you some pictures of that.
On the 97s, we carried JP4 back then, and avgas, and we refueled primarily B-47s. If you look up the tailpipe of a 47, it was nice and black. That airplane was burning JP4. It was nice and gray. Somewhere along the line, he got a load of avgas. It burned nice and gray, real clean.
You mentioned all those other air forces. What about the quality compared to what you went through? I mean, are they, if you're a 10, are they 10s? Are they 8s, 7s, 6s, or 5s?
One of the gentlemen who went through A-10 training with us was, we joked, I mean, he was part of the Luftwaffe, but we make the association to World War II. He was a German fighter pilot. He flew Tornadoes. I trust him with my life. I met some, and this is all through the A-10. I mean, we talked to countless pilots over the radios in the KC-10, but when I flew the A-10 and I was out in Tucson, Arizona at Davis Monthan Air Force Base, a lot of Air Forces come out there to do desert training because it's pretty much the very Goldwater range, pretty much free reign, as low as you want to go. Nobody lives out there. Fly how fast you want to fly, and they got targets set up out there. I met some British Harrier pilots. They were tremendous. I would trust pretty much any. I met some Polish pilots. There's jokes, we joked about them all the time, but they were good. I'd say any Western-ish, Western Europe pilot would be good. One of the instructors in IFF was Indian. He was good. The Indians are good. I don't know any Pakistanis. I'd say between us and them meaning the people we need to fly against. Who said this? Oh, geez. Some World War II ace said it's not the plane you're flying, it's the guy flying it. I'm sure Russians and Chinese have tremendous pilots, but I think ours are better. So I would trust any NATO or American, Canadian, Japanese pilot to protect us well.
When I was at Whalers, I got a chance to speak to a couple of Danish pilots. And the only way this man explained to me, he said, the Air Force has great pilots. He said, but they also have a rule book. The Danes, they're allowed to fly the airplane. And they're allowed to get good. Just don't break it and bring it back.
Yeah.
And so they push the envelope a lot more, and those things that you guys aren't allowed to do.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of rules, and most of them are made because there's blood attached or somebody died, and you learn a lot from those warnings, cautions, and notes in your -1 manual. But again, this German pilot I was telling you about, we have red flag. You've all heard of red flag? It's combat training out in the Nevada deserts. He apparently all the aircraft were aiming for the same target, and the way it was set up was you couldn't get to it. You were going to get shot down, simulated shot down. Radar's going to pick you up. You're not going to get there. Well, he got there because the German Air Force didn't have the same regulations as we did as how low you could fly. And there's a picture. I never saw it, but I believed him. He said there's a picture of him going on his target run, the last 2-3 miles, that someone took out there, and all you could see was the tail of his aircraft. He was flying up a dry riverbed below ground level, basically. Americans aren't allowed to do that, which, training-wise, I agree with them. But, yeah, he did that. That's...
You list 56,000 gallons a day. My understanding, the average tanker you see going down the highway has about 7,000 gallons in it.
Yeah.
You mean to tell me you have 7 of those truck loads of gasoline?
Yeah.
Where do you put it all?
The wings, there's two center tanks, wing tanks, there's a forward and aft tank. And it fits, but it's interesting you say that because most Air Force bases have fuel piping in the ground, so they can just open up a cover, attach a hose, and pipe the gas right in there. They don't need trucks. If we fly somewhere that only has trucks, and there's 2 or 3 of us there, or it's like an international airport that we're not the only customer, you need to plan ahead with the fuel. And aircraft leak, and our maintenance guys are tremendous. Say, hey, you want this much gas, but we're only putting this much on tonight because if we put over this amount, we're probably going to have a leak. Because they're old aircraft and they fly well, but every plane has its issues. So yeah, you got to really plan ahead about fuel trucks because depending on the country you're going to, it might take them hours to get you 7 fuel trucks. And some of those fuel trucks' pump rate is about that of a garden hose, it seems like. So it takes a long, long time to get it. And I've heard of trips that have delayed because of that. So we all know where to go and where not to go. And hey, fuel man, make sure you come out here tonight and put 4 of those trucks on tomorrow morning. I'm leaving at 7 when you're really leaving at 9, so that they get the rest of the fuel on in time. Because that level of haste does not always transfer over to those that are helping you out.
I saw a picture that there's a large cargo area. Are the fuel tanks under the cargo floor?
I can show you where they are.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Real quick, we got 3 engines, DC-10, 3 old Monster, 52,000 pounds thrust each. This normal cruise, 25,000 feet is where we do a lot of our refueling. So, and we do not go 496 knots when we're refueling. Usually somewhere between 250 and 300. Unless you're doing an A-10 or a C-130, then your deck angle's very high. They do around 200 knots. I don't have a very good picture for I don't have any pictures. I tried to find stuff online, but they were so small I just didn't think it was worth it. But the nice thing, when McDonnell Douglas built this aircraft, there's a lot of redundancy. We've got 3 hydraulic systems, they all back up each other. Whether the switch is off or not, if you lose an engine or if you stall the aircraft, which you shouldn't be doing, either one of them, there's backups to help make sure you're safe. The electrical system is outstanding. We got an APU, an auxiliary power unit, which is like literally a mini jet engine down near the tail, which provides a lot of electrical power. We got an ADG, which is basically there's a little handle by the co-pilot, and it drops a little propeller out into the slipstream to generate electricity. You have a battery, but 30 minutes on that max, and if you're over the North Atlantic, that's going to help you a little bit. So there's 3 modes. Normal, what's that? ADG?
Well, that's interesting. You could create your own power.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. It'll get you home. The engineers that design these aircraft, they really do think of everything. Our electrical system, you can run it isolated or normal. And in the normal mode, you got parallel and unparalleled. So what this means is, if you got a bad electrical system, let's say electrical system 1 is bad, 1 is an isolated, so it cannot infect the rest of the system. If it's good, you can do parallel or unparalleled. Parallel is where each system shares the load and no system gets too heavy of a load to protect each one of them. And if one of them dies, they automatically pick up the other system. Unparalleled mode, there is no load sharing. But if one of the systems shuts off, it still picks up the broken system.
Is it still 28 volt for the DC and 400 cycles for the AC?
I'm not an engineer. I know it's 28 volt DC, but AC, I think it's an old aircraft, so it was made in the early 80s, so I believe so. The joke is with our flight engineers, they know a lot more about the inner workings than we do. We're just supposed to know what the switch does when you turn it on, when you turn it off, and it's their job to understand everything else. And one of my instructors taught me, he goes, you got an iceberg with penguins on it. You put a penguin on, a penguin's got to get off. So make sure you load it up with the right penguins. So our fuel, this is just for air refueling. Our max transfer rate is 7,800 pounds a minute, so about 1,200 gallons a minute. Now that's for the bigger aircraft, the cargo, the C-5, the C-17, B-52. Smaller aircraft, less. Reverse AR, you can go up to 1,000 pounds a minute, which is about 150 gallons per minute. That's back up through your own boom. So I found this pretty interesting. With the 6 KC-10s, you can deploy 12 F-15s, 15 tons of equipment, over 200 troops to the Middle East non-stop. If you did not use the KC-10, it requires 16 KC-135s, 2 C-17 cargos, 2 C-5 cargo aircraft, 2 forward operating bases, because so the thing is, the footprint of these aircraft are so large, they don't want us there. The KC-10 is so big, it takes up so much room that they don't want you there because they can't have so many other aircraft. So 2 bases to support all those aircraft, a 2-day deployment, and 4 million extra pounds of fuel. So the KC-10 really does carry an immense amount of fuel. So let me see if I can find a picture to answer your question about the... So basically, for the fuel, you got the wings, the forward fuel tanks up in this area. We got a center tank that's between the wings. We got an aft tank, which is pretty much right behind the wings. So that's where they put it. Basically, the cargo hold for the DC-10, they outfitted into fuel bladders. So this is the process that I went through. I transferred from the A-10, went through initial qualification, learning how to fly the KC-10. CBTs are computer-based training. So basically you sit at a computer and learn about all the aircraft systems for 3 weeks. Classroom instruction, you're assigned an instructor. They're all former pilots or flight engineers that teach you the various courses. You go through a battery of simulator rides, and you go over to the FTU, the Flying Training Unit, which is where you actually learn how to fly the aircraft. The whole process took about 4 months, I believe. Yeah, about 4 months. When you're done, you go on what's called seasoning orders. So I'm a reservist. So even though these are active duty type orders, you're not a full-time pilot. Well, you are when you're in training, but your seasoning orders are built to get you good experience in oceanic training, international flying, air refueling, and cargo training. So those are about 6 months long of really flying a lot. So I'll talk about each one a little bit. So when we're mission planning, and some of it's pretty basic, but very important. Can I leave from McGuire? Can I take enough fuel so I don't have to land somewhere else? Can I get where I'm going with the fuel? Once I land, can I land there? And with an aircraft that weighs this much, we check weight bearing capability at different airfields, length of runway, we need a minimum of 7,000 feet, width of the taxiways, weight bearing capacity of the taxiways. So that's what all these things are here. DIPs are diplomatic clearance. We need permission to fly over certain countries. One thing is Ireland does not like any hazardous cargo flown over the country, and we're military, so we fly ammunition, we fly hazardous cargo. Might be fuel in a tank of a Humvee. Can't fly over Ireland, so we don't fly over Ireland. A PPR is information that you need to land somewhere, prior permission required. So I need permission to land at Ramstein Air Force Base because there's so much going on there, they need to plan for you. So you must land within a 2-hour window of whatever we say. Foreign clearance guide, so that tells you if I want to fly over Scotland, I need to make sure I have this call sign, I make sure they know this about my aircraft. If I'm going to land there, I got to know certain other things about the customs and the cultures. If I'm just flying over it, just different information we need for that. An ASSR, that's Airfield Suitability and Surveillance Report. Suitability report. It's how much weight can a taxiway hold? How much weight can the parking ramp hold? How much weight can the runway hold? Is anything under construction? Do they have the fuel we need? If I'm flying to Alaska, do they have de-icing capability? If it snows, can they clean off my plane? SDPs, those are emergency procedures, so we're so heavy, we can't just climb up and turn and get out of the way of the mountains. So in certain areas, they have a certain procedure, and it's built for aircraft our size and our weight. Can we comply if we lose an engine with these procedures? If we can't, we don't go there. AFD, that's just out of the FAA, Airfield Directory, just other information about the airfield. NOTAMs are just notices to airmen, basic things saying, hey, yeah, we know we have this system at Ramstein Air Base, but between March 1st and April 1st, the system shut down. So that lets me know that, hey, I can't land there if there's bad weather, because this is the only system they have that'll help me land. So guys have been caught before reading everything but missing a couple of small things. You get to Ramstein, you find out you can't land because the equipment isn't reliable. And when you're landing and there's mountains on either side of you, you want the equipment to be reliable. Do they have the fuel we need? Do they have enough fuel? And just like Bob said over here, how long will it take to get 7 trucks of fuel? We have 3 aircraft there. We all got to leave at the same time. Who's going to take the chance they're going to leak because they got to load up a day or two early because it takes them so long? Operating in quiet hours, especially in Europe, you're not taking off at certain times of day. So, hey, they want you to take off at 6 a.m. Well, they don't really want you doing that. ASAP and Giant Report. A Giant Report is something that we have in the Air Force that kind of takes, if you're taxiing down taxiway Bravo and your wingspan's more than this, you're going to be this